In our last unit for this trimester, we're going to be looking at mitosis. And before we get into all the steps of mitosis, we really need to kind of work backwards just a little bit, and we need to talk about cell growth. So cells do not grow forever and ever. They stay relatively small. So that must mean that there's some reasons why cells stay small. Okay, they have some limits. One of the reasons that cells are limited, or two reasons why they divide so that they can stay small, would be one, the demands on the DNA are too large for the cell to be able to handle. Remember, the DNA is in the nucleus, and the nucleus controls all the cell's activities. So if the ribosomes and the Golgi and the rough ER and the smooth ER are all trying to access the DNA, what should I build, what do I make, the DNA just can't keep up. So that would be one reason why cells divide. Another reason is moving nutrients. So a cell has to be able to get food and oxygen and get rid of waste, and it needs to be able to get the food and the oxygen all the way to even the very middle of the cell. So as food is coming in all directions, it needs to be able to get food all the way in, and it needs to be able to get the waste all the way back out. As cells get too big, that takes a long time, or it takes longer, and then what starts happening is the cell will kind of start dying from the inside out because the nutrients is not getting in, or it can become toxic because the waste isn't able to get out. So those are some reasons. And if we look at the first one again, if we look at the DNA overload, it's being over-accessed. It can't get the information out fast enough. The DNA in a small cell is able to meet the needs of that cell. It can communicate with the ribosomes and the Golgi and the rough ER and smooth ER and all the lysosomes and everything it needs to communicate with. And it can do that in a manner that everything is kept efficiently working and running. The larger a cell gets, it's not able to get the information fast enough to be able to survive. So it can't make the proteins or the lipids or whatever it is making quick enough for the cell to be able to function. If we take a look again at the exchanging of materials, being able to get your nutrients and waste in and out quick enough. When we exchange, we're exchanging things like food and oxygen and water. Those need to enter, and the waste has to exit, and all of that has to happen through the cell membrane. So the cell membrane, the amount of cell membrane is kind of a key component to whether or not it can allow enough food and oxygen and water in and waste out in a timely manner. Now the rate at which all this happens, in other words, how quickly you can get food and oxygen in and waste out, will depend on the surface area of the cell. So if you think about surface area, like in math, we're going to be measuring what is the total area of just the outside edge, because that would represent kind of our cell membrane. And the rate at which we use our food and our oxygen is going to depend on the volume. So if you have a lot of material inside of this cell that it has to use up and needs nutrients, that's going to depend on how much food and oxygen you need, whereas a smaller cell with a different amount of volume is going to require a different, it can use the food and oxygen quicker than what a larger cell could. So surface area and volume are two key pieces that we need to be able to understand and mathematically calculate so that we can think about what the best size of a cell we could have. So, and we do that by looking at the ratio. So we need to know the surface area and the volume in order to come up with a ratio. And we're going to take a look at surface area first. This would be calculated by looking at the length and the width and multiplying that by the number of sides. Now we are going to be looking at a cube. So for a cube, all the sides are the same. And we're going to be calculating the surface area, so this is definitely something I expect you to write down. You will not get full credit for your notes if you don't. So for the surface area, I said it was the length times the width times the number of sides. So if we look at this example, we have a length of 5 centimeters and a width of 5 centimeters. And the number of sides, you can only see 3, but remember there is a bottom, and there is a side and a back and a top, and there are 6 sides. There's always 6 sides to a cube. Now, if you mathematically put that in your calculator, 5 times 5 times 6, you're going to get 150. And you have centimeters times centimeters, so surface area is always squared. So we have 150 centimeters squared. Now we also need to know the volume so that we can do the ratio. So the volume is length times width times height. And the volume is going to increase faster than your surface area does once you hit a certain point. So once you get to a certain size cube, and you're taking your length and your width and your height, and they're all going to be the same number, you're going to see that your surface area is going to start slowing down, and the volume is going to start getting bigger. So if we take a look at our volume, again, length times width times height, we're going to be taking 5 centimeters times 5 centimeters, and height is also 5 centimeters. Nice thing with a cube, they're all the same. And when we calculate that, we'll get 125, and this is centimeters cubed because you have centimeters multiplied together 3 times. All right, so there's how you get your volume. We already took a look at surface area. So now we're going to take a look at the ratio. There's really no spot for you to write that, so just find some empty space. We're looking at the surface, surface area to volume ratio. So that means you want your surface area to go first and your volume to go second. So our surface area was 150 and our volume was 125. Now that makes it really hard to compare, so we always usually divide those so that we can get our volume equal to 1. So if you take 150 and you divide it by 125, you're going to get 1.2, and then you are going to have your volume equal to 1. So this is for our cube. We have a 1.2 to 1 ratio. Now if we compare that to some other cubes, what I want you to notice is this ratio. So for the smallest cube was only 1 centimeter length, width, and height. It ended up with a 6 to 1 ratio. Volume was 1, surface area was 6. So 6 divided by 1 gave us 6. Our 2 centimeter cube, we had a surface area of 24 divided by the volume of 8, so we get a 3 to 1 ratio. And 3 by 3 centimeter cube, 54 divided by 27, so we get a 2 to 1 ratio. So our cube is somewhere over here because it was a 5 centimeter cube. And if you notice what's happening to the ratio, as your cell gets bigger, your ratio is going from 6 to 3 to 1, to ours is 1.2. So what happens when a cell gets bigger, you need to know that the ratio is getting smaller. And if the ratio is small, that doesn't help the cell get the food and the oxygen and get rid of the waste fast enough, so those cells will start to die out. The larger your ratio is actually means that your cell is small. And the smaller the cell, the better it is at getting all those materials.